Howdy, howdy, howdy. My name is Nachi Sasuke, and welcome back to Let's Read the SCP Foundation Wiki. In the last episode, I know that I read Solve for Bear, so that means we're up to the hardest game. So we're going to be reading the hardest game, what used to be called Lucy the Kitten, Factory Makeup, Consultant Rats, and this split up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, okay. So what's the hardest game? Well, it's safe, so I guess it's just a board game? SCP-1315 is kept in secure storage at Site-15. It is stored within a small safe on premises, the code to which can be requested via a written application from Dr. Somebody. As 1315 will not exhibit any anomalous effects unless directly interacted with, no further containment is necessary. What is it, Jumanji? Item SCP-1315 is what appears to be a standard 5.5 by 4.1 inch video game cartridge for use with the North American version of the Nintendo Entertainment System console, also known as the NES. There's one of those right behind me with no cables. Gotta do something about that. The cartridge is manufactured out of gray plastic and is unlabeled. According to an operation manual package with the cartridge, the game is entitled Professor Ghoul's Terrifying Horror Challenge, and is accompanied with a subtitle reading a realistic, high-stakes action game for 1 to 2 players. When the cartridge is used in a Nintendo Entertainment System, a black screen appears, containing nothing except a simple menu with the option for a single player or a 2-player mode. Pressing the start button on either of the options advances to another screen, where the game asks to confirm whether the persons currently holding the game's controller are those who wish to play the game. If the no option is selected, the game will return to the mode select menu. Selecting yes prompts the game to beep loudly and then display a blank red screen. Nothing more will happen on screen after this point. At this point, the game will begin, and the players of the game will be subjected to a series of increasingly horrific challenges that apparently manifest in the physical world. While players will report being chased by monsters from within the game, it appears, to the best of the Foundation's knowledge, that the elements of the game are only visible to the players and do not exist for other people who happen to be in the same area. The challenges involve players escaping from or combating hostile creatures over a series of levels. Each time a challenge is won, the game will inform the player of the objective for the next, and then the game will continue. The game's manual claims the fun never ends and does not specify how many challenges must be completed in order to win the game, if you can even win it, though disposable dudes who have played the game have thus far managed to reach level 33. Once the game has begun, it cannot be halted until the players either win or are defeated. Turning the system off simply renders the players unable to receive hints from the game, and physically leaving the area in which the game is set up simply causes the phenomena manifested to follow them elsewhere. Those playing the game grow gradually more distressed as the challenges continue, until they report that the game has become too hard for them and they are captured by the enemies within the game, which prompts the game to end and the players to disappear. It is not currently known where they're taken upon losing the game. To hell, probably. Test log 1. It appears that the contents of the game is static and does not change on subsequent playings. Different players have reported similar events occurring on certain levels, though there does appear to be some element of randomness as some slight variation has been observed. Let's see that test log. Level 1. A large number of either spiders, rats, or various insects attempt to overwhelm the player. A large container of insecticide or rodent poison appears somewhere within blank meters of their location. They win when they destroy the vermin. Level 3. A group of 2 to 6 wild animals made up of any composition of bears, wolves, or large cats attempts to eat the player. They must survive for 1 hour. A shotgun and an accompanying box of rounds appears within blank meters of their location, but using it to kill any of the animals causes 2 more animals of the same species to appear within 5 minutes. Level 7. Their location is assaulted by either 1 or 2 hostile men with weapons ranging from machetes and axes to a chainsaw, and on one occasion, a gun. Or a firearm, doesn't have to be a gun. Could literally be a firearm. The player must survive for either 1 hour or kill the attackers, though no weapons are provided. Level 9. 2 to 5 armed men, supposedly resembling a random group of authority or local police force known to the player, converge on the player's location and attempt to apprehend them. The player wins the level by resisting capture for a period of 2 hours. A loaded firearm appears within blank meters of the player's location, but using it to kill any of the attackers causes the remaining gunmen to call for backup, which arrives within the next 10 minutes. Level 12. There's a lot of these. Well, they did say they got to level 33, but level 33 is expunged. Level 31, I just skipped ahead a bit. Okay, so several tests have been conducted with 1315 in an attempt to determine the origins of its anomalous properties. Let's see. Game is run but no option selected. Nothing happens, remains on the opening menu. Single player option selected using mechanical factory arm. The game determines D-class personnel operating the arm to be the player. Game begins as normal. The above tests are repeated, this time using a pre-programmed probe robot to start. The game refuses to advance past confirmation screen. The NES is turned off during a game, and then an attempt to turn it back on. Fails to turn on. 1315 removed during a game with the console still on. The console does not turn off, and red screen remains, and players report still being able to receive messages from the game. The above test is repeated, but 1315 is then inserted into a different NES and the power is turned on. Game refuses to start. Foundation researchers attempt to interfere with the game, providing weaponry and supplies to the players. Disposable personnel report that the provided weaponry becomes jammed or breaks when used against game enemies. Above test repeated, but the weapons are left in the player's vicinity when the game begins, rather than being given during game progress. They report being able to use them without penalty. Researchers come to the conclusion that objects already present in the environment upon game start are incorporated into the game. Foundation researchers attempt to access the game code stored on the cartridge. Like kilobytes of data found on the chip, data appears to be corrupted and cannot be accessed. Game data dumped onto a computer and copied into a second cartridge. Second one exhibits similar anomalous properties to the first. Duplicate cartridge destroyed. Copying the cartridge is banned. Dumped ROM data is opened and played in a PC-based NES emulation program, and game fails to start. Testing is henceforth suspended until further developments can be discovered. History. SCP-1315 was recovered from a computer and video game store somewhere on... They've been doing it backwards, so I guess it's April 11th, 1986. After an employee of said store attempted to burn the establishment down in an effort to destroy 1315, which he and a friend had used during a down period some days prior. Said employee was arrested by the Blank Police Department and held in custody. Although those on duty reported that he had not been released from his cell, he supposedly vanished and is still missing as of some point in the 2000s. Other employees of the video game store were interviewed, though it has been determined that none of them possess any knowledge of 1315 or its origins. Excerpt from Operation Manual, included with the cartridge on recovery. Professor Ghoul's terrifying horror challenge is a realistic and scary action game that the entire family can enjoy. The manic Professor Ghoul invites all comers to test their mettle, wits, and strength in his fantastic challenge. Do you have what it takes to be victorious? Playing the game is easy. All you have to do is choose whether you want to go it alone or with a friend, and then do whatever it takes to survive level after level of horrifying action and adventure. Once you've started the game, you can play it anywhere, home, in town, at school, wherever Professor Ghoul's spooky creations find you. The fun never ends. Be careful, though. Professor Ghoul is a man of honor, and once you've decided to take on the challenge, you can't stop until someone emerges the victor. Manage to get through with all your body parts intact, and you'll be the coolest kid in town. Lose, however, and you're at the mercy of Professor Ghoul. There are no extra lives in Professor Ghoul's terrifying horror challenge, and no second chances. Get game over, and you're done. Okay. Next up is formerly Lucy the Kitten, but now feline espionage device. So what happened there? Oh, looks like a kitten. During attempted interrogation by Dr. Granmere, which goes to file Persian cat. Wait, so is the doctor also a cat? SCP-1316 is to be the only SCP object contained at Biocontainment Site-39. It is to be housed in a 2.5 by 2 by 1.5 meter enclosure constructed from radio frequency shielding material. A single radio receiver is to be placed in the containment area of 1316 in order to record all transmissions. Access to recordings of the transmissions of 1316 is contingent upon approval of at least 2 level 4 personnel. Feedings are to take place twice daily, while litter is to be changed every 3 days by a single disposable dude. Only disposable personnel may come within 10 meters of 1316. SCP-1316 is a female Felis catus, or common house cat. It exhibits no unusual behavior besides a marked friendliness towards strangers. Despite having been in Foundation custody since 1948, it is physiologically identical to a 3-month-old kitten and shows no signs of aging. Upon acquisition by the Foundation, SCP-1316 was originally classified as an anomalous object. It used to say every day at 9:20:37 GMT, which I think is Greenwich Mountain Time. I don't know. 1316 emits a radio broadcast between 4225 and 16,048 kilohertz for exactly 5 minutes. This transmission can be picked up on any standard shortwave radio. The broadcast opened with 3 bars taken from a British folk ballad, Tam Lin, followed by an artificially generated female voice reading a series of 80 numbers. See Addendum 131633M. Following Incident 23A, only disposable dudes are to come into contact with 1316 to reduce likelihood of intelligence breach. Anomalous object entry. Item description: a female felis catus or common house cat which does not age. Despite advanced age, allegedly purchased by Ms. Blank in 1926, retains physical characteristics of a 3-month-old kitten. Date of recovery: some point 1948. Location: somewhere. Current status: contained at Site 112. Allowed free range of sight outside of SCP object containment areas. Responds to Lucy. Incident 23A. On August the 16th, 1952, Site 112 was attacked by a pre-dawn raid by several Chaos Insurgency strike teams. A massive security breach ensued, during which SCPs blank, blank, and blank were stolen, blank and blank were destroyed, and blank, blank, and blank disappeared. Blank Foundation personnel were killed in the course of the breach. Following standard counterintelligence practice, all Foundation personnel were debriefed and a scan of the site for bugs ensued. In addition to blank standard electronic listening devices, 1316 was found to be a source of regular broadcasts. The content of these broadcasts was determined to be some manner of cipher. Movement of the subject has been restricted pending deciphering of broadcast. August 17th. Operation successful. Mission complete. Request further orders or extraction. F suspicious. Movement restricted. Requesting extraction. Orders not forthcoming. Requesting notification. Confined to a single room. Was promised extraction upon completion of mission. Moved to new site. Unclear on status of mission. Requesting further orders. Was referred to WSCP Desig F nodes. Request immediate extraction. Unclear if last message received. Extraction requested. Please. There is no extraction. There is no extraction, is there? Addendum 33M. Following the 824 broadcast, 1316 has ceased regular broadcasts. Other anomalous properties remain. Researcher. So it sounds like the cat was sent in by the Chaos Insurgency and was told that it would be extracted after the mission was successful. And then it's like, no one's coming, is there? So it's entirely possible the cat was not a cat and may have actually been a person at some point. I don't know whether or not that's something that the Chaos Insurgency does to people. Feline espionage device. You could still call it Lucy the Kitten, but it is also still an espionage device. Or at least it was. Factory makeup. Now, is that actually like makeup from a factory, or is it makeup from the factory? All known instances of 1317 are to be housed in Vault 13 of Site 77's Safe SCP Wing. Each unit is to be inspected on a rotational basis to prevent any chemical corrosion of their containers. A small subset of 1317's substance, is to be set aside for allocated testing purposes. Following a containment breach of multiple 1317 instances initiated by SCP-703, all testing instances are to remain outside of 703's area of effect. In the event of the discovery of any additional instances of SCP-1317, they are to be cataloged and their point of origin sought out. SCP-1317 is a collection of vintage cosmetics manufactured sometime in 1942. Individual tins of 1317 weigh approximately 0.5 kilograms. The individual containers of 1317 are brown, with the makeup itself being a shade of beige. The words "The Factory" have been embossed onto the bottom of each instance of 1370. It's been a long time since we got something from that place. It's almost like I invoked it by reading its entry a couple weeks ago. When 1317 comes into contact with living animal tissue, it will begin to integrate itself into the tissue. Continuous application will lead to the affected tissues being completely replaced by 1317. In addition, it will replicate the biological function of all tissues it replaces. Any existing imperfections or blemishes will be removed. Adding dyes can change the skin tone, and it is possible to mold and adjust 1317 in a manner similar to clay without causing harm. If the user does not continue to apply 1317, the affected tissue will lose its cohesion over the next 5 weeks, which leads to the user experiencing potentially fatal trauma. SCP-1317 was discovered in 1943 when an unusually high number of persons with critical skin conditions were reported from several U.S. cities. Interviews with victims revealed that they had obtained 1317 via an advertisement in local newspapers to market test new makeup products. Following the address provided by the advertiser led to a warehouse containing over something thousand instances of 1317. However, shortly after this warehouse was discovered, instances began appearing in pharmacies and newspaper advertisements in the United States, Canada, Britain, Italy, Russia, France, and Germany. Why does Germany have a thing on it? Including territories occupied or controlled by Germany. Between 1943 and 1946, an estimated something thousand additional instances were recovered from those regions. Addendum A. As of May 1946, 1317 ceased appearing in those areas. It is still unknown where they were produced or how they were transported and stocked. So it sounds like the makeup turns people into Clayface. Addendum B. Progression of symptoms related to 1317. 1 week. The user will report irritation in areas that are affected by 1317, similar to a mild rash. May also report increased amounts of skin flaking. 2 weeks, the user will begin to develop more severe rashes in the afflicted areas. These rashes are usually a dark green or a light purple. In addition, any of the user's hair located in these areas will begin to fall out. At 3 weeks, the user will report serious discomfort in the affected areas. The rash will have become discolored and afflicted areas will cause the user large amounts of pain. Users at this stage will become highly reclusive due to their appearance, but only a small percentage will seek medical care. At 4 weeks, users at this stage begin to experience extreme fatigue. In addition, they will begin to have large amounts of tissue disintegrate. 98% of users who reach 4 weeks of exposure will have lost all body hair in the afflicted area. After 5 weeks have passed, the user's afflicted flesh will begin to lose cohesion. The first tissue to dissolve will usually be soft tissue such as the user's eyes, cheeks, or loose areas of skin, and damage to the dental cavity resulting in the dissolution of the gums and tooth loss. Following this, deeper tissue such as muscle and ligaments will begin dissolving. In cases where the user had 1317 for more than 6 months, the dissolution of organs such as the intestine, liver, and bladder will result, along with partial liquefaction of the visual or olfactory codices. Well, damn. So it sounds like as long as you use it for the rest of your life, the makeup from the factory can be handy, because it'll get rid of blemishes and skin marks and also make you able to mold your face or whatever you put it on into whatever shape you want. So if you want to put that stuff on your hands and then have like 3 extra fingers, you could do that. And then if you forget, you will lose everything. So anyway, consultant rats. I assume they are going to be rats that can speak. Nope, stop that. They're Euclid. The file photo of Frankie, first discovered specimen of 1318. Specimens of Frankie, well, it's not specimens of Frankie, but specimens of 1318 are to be kept in individual wire cages in a secured room in a facility otherwise devoid of laboratory animals. Due to the nature of the cognitive hazard presented by 1318, no research staff shall be permitted to interact directly with specimens. Any experiments involving specimens are to be carried out by appropriately trained disposable dudes under remote observation by the assigned researcher. Experimental protocols should be designed to strictly limit the duration of exposure to 1318 specimens. No individual disposable dudes is to be scheduled for this duty more than once per week. Under no circumstances should any personnel be assigned duty which would increase their cumulative exposure time to 1318 to over 16 hours. Any personnel showing signs of excessive 1318 exposure are to be treated with amnestics and must undergo a thorough psychological examination before returning to duty. If delusions persist after drug treatment and counseling, disability leave may be granted at the discretion of the project lead. Class D personnel experiencing persistent delusions are to be terminated. Description: SCP-1318 is a spontaneously occurring phenomenon found in an estimated 0.00001% of the specimens of the Long Evans strain of Rattus norvegicus. This phenomenon appears to be restricted to the Long Evans strain and has never been witnessed in the other laboratory strains or wild specimens. The Norwegian brown rat. Instances are indistinguishable from other Long Evans specimens in size, intelligence, appearance, and lifespan. However, humans spending 20 to 80 cumulative hours in close proximity, approximately 3 meters, to a specimen develop the following delusional complex: that the specimen is sapient and capable of speech, that the specimen is a subject matter expert in their field of employment, that their best ideas originate from conversations with the specimen, that these properties of 1318 are possibly hereditary, and that any offspring of the specimen should be exempt from experimentation pending unspecified analysis. That possession of 1318 provides significant competitive advantage, precluding the sharing of the data about specimens with outside organizations. In addition to this cumulative effect, persons introduced to a 1318 specimen by an affected individual will immediately be affected by the delusional system. An introduction consists of addressing the specimen as a sentient being who is being made acquainted with the unaffected individual. While affected persons report that they hear the 1318 specimen speaking, review of recordings of such conversations reveal that the affected persons are, in fact, sub-vocalizing the specimen's responses to their queries. No reported responses were found to lie outside of the knowledge domain of the affected individual. 1318 was discovered when a routine performance review in 1993 found that the productivity at the Biosciences Laboratory at Research Site 27 had declined by 75% in a 6-month period without a corresponding decline in research quality. An internal audit of the facility determined that the entire staff of the lab were affected by delusions pertaining to a male SCP-1318 specimen, who they dubbed Frankie. 2 members of the audit team were likewise affected before the nature of the hazard was determined. All affected personnel were interviewed and treated with amnestics, though 15% of staff suffered from persistent delusional states and were subsequently relieved of duty. Frankie was determined to have entered the facility as a part of a routine delivery of model organisms from Charles Rivers Laboratories. No anomalous properties were detected in any other specimens in the shipment. Okay. Interview log 1318-15. Agent Davidson. Good morning, Mr. Mooney. I would like to ask a few questions about the model organism designated SCP-1318-1. Hey, sure. There sure are a lot of you internal affairs guys around. Is everything okay? This is an information gathering exercise, not a disciplinary hearing. Now, what can you tell me about SCP-1318-1? You mean Frankie, right? Yes, I believe the staff refer to it as Frankie. Oh, Frankie's great. He's real easy to talk to, and he's got a head for organic chemistry like nobody I've ever seen. How did you discover its anomalous properties? Well, a couple of months ago I was getting really stuck trying to synthesize one of the components from the SCP blank fluid, and I was bitching about it in the lunchroom. Kowalski from Virology says to me, "Hey, you should run that by Frankie." And I'm like, who the fuck is Frankie? So researcher Kowalski introduced you to the specimen. Yeah. He takes me into the mostly empty storeroom, nothing in there except this big cage with this one little rat in it. And I'm like, where the hell's this Frankie guy? Kowalski says that's him right there, referring to the rat. Yeah, so I'm just about to punch Kowalski in the mouth for taking me on a snipe hunt, but when he starts talking to Frankie, and Frankie starts talking back, what were they discussing? Oh, Kowalski's like, hey, my buddy Mooney here is stuck on some hairy O-chem. Do you think you can help him out? And Frankie's all, sure thing. Nice to meet you, Mr. Mooney. It was weird, too, because you'd think a little rat like that would have a squeaky voice or something, but he sounded just like a regular guy. Was your discussion with the organism fruitful? Yeah, it was amazing. I just told him what I was trying to do, and he walked me through a possible synthesis easy as giving directions to the grocery store. I took it back to the lab, and it worked first time. And you continued to consult with the organism? Yeah, I did. By the end of the month, most of the guys in the lab were talking to Frankie when they got stuck on something. A little bastard can talk about almost anything you throw at him, you know? Why did you not disclose the presence of the anomaly? Well... It sounds stupid when I say now, but everyone in the biolab kind of figured that Frankie was our secret weapon. Everyone was doing amazing work, and we figured we'd keep it to ourselves for a little bit. Our records show that while the quality of work coming from your lab was consistently high, there was a precipitous drop in total output. If the organism was so helpful, how do you account for this? Yeah, so it was a couple of things, I guess. The biggest problem is that there are only so many hours in the day, and Frankie's asleep for half of them, so the scheduling got to be a little hairy. People were unable to proceed unless they could consult with the organism? Well, it's like, you could get around, you get going without talking to Frankie, but once you talk to him, you probably have to start over anyway, so why bother? Also, lots of people's time was taken up with the breeding program. Breeding program? Yeah, we figured we couldn't keep it to ourselves forever, and how great would it be if every lab in the Foundation had their own Frankie? That will be all for now, Mr. Mooney. Okay, so it sounds like, I don't know how many rats like this there were before they decided to do that, but it's probably pretty bad now. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, last one, the split up. If I can click it the right way and not be stupid. It claims to be safe, and the article's not even that long except for these 2 interview logs, which might change that. SCP-1319-1 and 2 are currently kept in separate containment cells at site somewhere. 1 and 2 are not to be brought within 3 meters of each other in order to prevent possible violent behavior and ensure cooperation on their part. In cases where one is having difficulty in moving due to its lack of legs, use of a stretcher is authorized. Okay. Are these two parts of a body? Any experimentation involving either one or two must be authorized by at least one member of Level 3 personnel. Description: SCP-13 is the collective designation for two different entities. One is the upper body of Research Assistant Someone. One consists of their upper torso, head, and arms. Due to its possession of the head, one is capable of speech, making it much easier to communicate with than two. To accommodate for its lack of legs, one moves by pulling itself along the floor with its hands. One enjoys the consumption of food, despite the fact that this food inevitably exits its body through the hole in its torso. Two, the lower body of a Research Assistant Blank consists of lower torso and its legs. Two has the ability to hear commands given to it by researchers and perceive its surroundings, despite its lack of a head and associated organs. Due to its lack of a head, communication with two is much more difficult than with one. Both one and two harbor intense feelings of resentment for each other, and meetings between the two have frequently resulted in violence. During questioning, one has indicated that the mutual resentment stems from the circumstances of their separation, presumably referring to the incident in which they were created. Neither of the two appear to be alarmed by the lack of their other half or the injury resulting from their split. Neither one or two possess the original personality of Researcher Assistant Blank, and identify as completely different entities. They do not require sustenance or air, but do appear to enjoy these things despite them lacking the bodily functions required to actually benefit from them. 1 and 2 came into existence on the date at some point in the 2000-somethings at 1:25 p.m. At the time, Researcher Assistant Blank was eating his lunch at Site Blank's cafeteria. Suddenly, he was observed to say the words, "You know what? Fuck this! Fuck you!" seconds before violently separating from into 1 and 2. 2 attempted to flee the area, while 1 attempted to climb onto the table and resume consumption of Research Assistant Blank's lunch. Both were subsequently brought into containment. Despite investigation, no potential cause for this event has thus far been discovered. Interview 1. Hello, SCP-13-1. Hey, Doc. I'd just like to ask you a few questions, if that's alright. Sure, I don't mind. Now, I'll have to warn you, they are about SCP-1319 too. Oh, him. I hope that won't be a problem. No. Not really. I'm not even that mad, to be honest. He's less rational about it, but you can't let him get to you. I'd like to know about how you and 2 came to separate, if you know. Well, it was more a bunch of little things if you really want to know. He was just incompetent. We'd be going down the hallway or something and he'd just trip, and I'd be like, what the fuck was that? He'd play ignorant, but I'd know he messed up. The thing that really got me was he never improved. He never took my advice and actually applied it to the way he did his job. This job being walking. Not always. Driving cars was a problem with him too. You won't believe this. One time we were driving down the street, I was doing my job, steering and everything, and what does the stupid dick do? Drive straight through a red light. He was going down and he was pulling me down with him. So you separated. Yeah, I just had enough of his bullshit. The excuses, all of it. Got out of there, tried to be dignified about it. Didn't want to make a scene, but he goes running, drawing all this unwanted attention to me because I'm the one who has to stay and clean up after him. I see. Well, thank you, SCP-1319-1. No problem. Interview log 2. Hello, SCP-13-2. I'd like to ask you a couple of yes or no questions, if that's alright. Tap your foot once for no and twice for yes. You understand? Taps foot twice. Good. Now, are you aware of your current location? Taps foot twice. Why is that? Do you remember being here when you were connected to 1? Taps foot once. So, you can actually see your surroundings. Taps foot twice. I see. Now, I'd like to talk about 1, if that's alright. Ceases movement. Do you resent 1? No movement. Ah, do you dislike 1? No movement. Do you hate 1? Stomps foot twice. He says the separation between you two was your fault. Do you believe that? Stamps foot once. So you believe it was his fault. Stamps foot twice. Well, thank you, SCP-13-2. That's all for now. This is another one of those SCPs that feels like it was a joke SCP that shouldn't have made it into the real entries. So I really do kind of feel like the 1300 is going to be a whole bunch of should have been joke SCPs and some sort of vendetta against cats. There seems to be a lot of both those things right now. But anyway, that about does it for this episode of Let's Read the SCP Foundation Wiki. As usual, I do not know what episode this is. I will know in editing. If you liked it, a like and a subscribe would be groovy. If you didn't, you don't need to do either one of those things. If you want to click the bell, you can do that as well so that you're notified of future uploads. And I will see y'all in the next one. Later!